Hey, good morning, afternoon, or evening, you guys. Good to see you here. Give us a shout out where you're from. We always love to hear from you guys. And we've got an interesting, different show here. We're going to do some critiquing in a minute, but I'm going to give you guys an example of some of my one of my projects. Actually, probably the very first project I ever did that was a concerted effort as a project, and I'll tell you about it in just a second. But give us a shout out where you're from. We love to hear from you. And I'm getting a little chime here. Does that mean Jared can't hear me or what? Are you there, Jared? Says you're in the green room. Okay, well, let's get you out of the green room. I don't know why it's saying that. Because you should be. Oh, there we go. That's why. All right. So now we can hear
Hello.
you. Okay.
Yes.
That's better, huh? When you can
Yeah.
talk.
Yes.
Okay, we got you out of the green room. So give us a shout out, you guys. We see some people there watching us, but we don't know where you're from. Okay, so before I go any further, I do want to remind you guys to subscribe and enable the bell so you don't miss any of our future shows. We've got a lot of stuff we're always rolling out, and when you subscribe and you enable the bell, you'll be notified as these things come along. Okay, so first of all, I just want to let you know. There we go, Bakami. Hey, from Illinois. Great. Um, I'm a photographer. I'm an author and an educator here in Carmel, California. And I want to let you know the show is brought to you by our friends at Bay Photo. Let's print something amazing. I love that motto because that's what I'm all about. You can get 25% off on albums. That could be a photo book. That's pretty cool. 25% off. 30% off on press printed cards, books, and more. They do a really, really good job, you guys, with these cards. Any of their press printed stuff, it's so professional, and it's really cool to have these made so that you can send out cards. I use them in the studio. We send out obviously holiday cards, but you can make other cards, to advertise your work and send those to clients. That's a really, really good thing. I know photographers who do that. Just, look, you're promoting your work. It's got to look good. So get, one of these press printed cards, 30% off, and as always, you can get 25% off on your first order. Okay, now I want to give you guys a little bit of a mini class here before we dive into your critiquing. So, I'm going to just give a little shout out to Paulo, hey, and Yvette. Good that you're joining us. And this is something I really want you to consider before you even look at a camera. You need to know what the product is that you're going for. A product is a thing that is the result of an action or process. You got to think in terms of what's my end product? What am I trying to create here with this photograph? That keeps you from just sort of randomly pressing the shutter, which tends to be a snapshot. Pros always are thinking in terms of what am I doing with this photograph? Where is it going? And one thing you should definitely consider is the emotional content of your photograph. So let's pull this slide up here. The next thing is, what is the whole secret? I gave it away. What's the whole secret to a photograph? There's a number one secret. There's a lot of different secrets, but the number one is emotional content. I love this quote. Without emotional content, we take pictures. With it, we create art. Now, if you've hung around AYP, you know that we do not take pictures. Taking pictures is sort of like you're grabbing them from the environment somehow. We make a picture, we make a photograph. You do that by being purposeful. And when you add emotional content to your photographs, it's going to come to life. Very important. Now, the very, very first project that I did, I created You can read about it in this book, Create. I had the adventure of going to Mexico for my last semester of senior year in high school. And I worked on a medical dispensary project. You can read about it in that book. I took this camera here. This is my uncle gave me this Rolleiflex. It produces a photograph. It produces a negative about like that. It's square, 2¼ inches by 2¼ inches. And I took a lot of rolls of film. Now, I was already a pretty good photographer, but I think this project really helped me become a much better photographer. And let me just show you some of these photographs. This is a series. This is the first place we ended up, a small town called Ojoa, Mexico, at the end of a road that takes about a day by Jeep, very remote, above Mazatlan. And this was some school children. You know, the amazing thing is these people allowed me into their life. And, you know, one of the things that can be very challenging is getting people to relax when you pull a camera out. Now, the one thing about that camera that's actually quite handy is you look down into it. You look down this way, so you don't have a camera right in front of your face. That can be an incredible barrier between you and your subject. And you can avoid that with, modern cameras where you have an LED screen that you can, LCD screen rather, not LED, that you can flip up and you can actually look down. That's actually a handy thing to do. But you'll notice in these photographs, there's emotion. There's an emotion that these kids are portraying here. This is the same guy in the other one, but in a different location. I didn't obviously pose any of these people. They were doing what they're doing. I pulled my camera out, but they're allowing me to take their images, their photographs. And this is a series here. This was the hut where we lived. We actually lived outside, but this was considered a village. It basically consisted of one hut with a family in it. And they had a herd of goats. And this is one of the children of the parents who basically had this little village, we'll call it. They had these goats, and he's leaning up against, the adobe wall here. This is how they constructed things. Handmade adobe, handmade tiles. Just, rather amazing. Again, I'm getting inside their world here. And these were two little girls that came to this hut, this village, I think they were bringing oranges or taking them away. And I just stood there with my camera. That's sort of Vermeer lighting. It's light coming in through this open door. That's the only light source. So you can see they're very shaded on that side, but we have a light source here that's illuminating them. And this is Fausto. He was one of the two workers that actually worked on the project with us. We made all the adobe here. We cut the trees and hewed them into pieces of wood here and made the door frame, the window frame. Anyway, Fausto's leaning out here. Now, normally he was a very kind of jovial guy. For some reason, he gave me this really stern look. I don't recall directing him to do that, but I think it's a very genuine look, and he is perfectly framed within this window. I love this photograph personally, even though I'm the one that took it. There's no reason you shouldn't love your own photographs, and you actually should. This was one of the boys working on the project named Agrippino, and another little boy here. This frame is actually how we made the roof tiles. You put clay in here, and you put another piece of wood underneath it, and it turns it into a kind of the rounded shape. Once we made all these tiles, we burnt them. It's called firing them, literally with a fire. Inside here are a whole bunch of tiles, and these were fires that were lit at night, as you can see. And what they did was they burned and created enough heat to do what you do with pottery. You have to fire it. You have to put heat on it, or else it'll just fall apart. So here I am following this whole sequence. In the middle of my stay there, I went on an 80-mile solo backpacking trip to the Rio Verde. And I just saw these two boys on the path and captured them again with my Rolleiflex. And this boy is a little stiffer than the other boy, but I thought it was really interesting. Just here they are. I think they're going off to school with their little satchel. I'm just capturing life around me. And same trip, this boy's riding a horse. He's got, these bags of probably some oranges and some food and that sort of thing. This is midday, so it's really harsh sun. Fortunately, he had a hat on, so his face was shaded. But you can see how contrasty it is. And the shadow right here, there's hardly any shadow, so that means the sun is basically directly overhead. Not great lighting, but it worked. And this was the final in this series. This was a cowboy back in that town of Ojoa, Mexico. Now, the reason I'm showing you these is because I really believe that you can elevate your photography by deciding for yourself. No one gave me this assignment. I decided for myself to really capture what life was like in this small remote region of Mexico. And I'm really thankful that I did that, and I took the job seriously. I took my job as a photographer seriously. I operated as though I was a pro photographer. Technically I was, because I had been selling my work, but I had no idea what the end result was for these photographs. Years later, I turned them into an exhibit. I put them in my books. You can purpose your photographs in many ways later on if you've captured them earnestly and you've captured the emotion in them. So this is why I'm going to ask you guys, each one of you who are watching this, to really think about your own project. Does that make sense? In our AYP Plus community, everybody is doing that right now. We're actually going through a 28-day challenge where everybody's picked out a project and they're following it along. And I really recommend that to you, even if you're not in that group. Get in there and do your own project. It will make your photographs so much stronger. You've heard Dan Milner talk about this. He talks about it all the time. Why you want to just go from single images to connected photographs. Once you start connecting, it's like writing a book. It's different than writing one page. When you write a book, you have to connect everything together. And when you make a project, it's like a chapter. You can have different chapters, you can have different projects, but they all fit together and tell a cohesive story. I want you guys to do that. It will make a difference. And let me know how that goes for you, okay? And that's my little lesson for you right now. And as we go through later, in this month and next month, as we're critiquing, we can actually start focusing on some of those projects, okay? As always, if you guys have comments or questions about what I'm talking about, please throw them in there. I'm looking at your comments right now. Paulo says, I want to get better, and I want my black and white to be better. Okay. I love black and white, and it has its own flavor. It has its own feeling. It's very different than color photography. So, stay tuned with us. I'm going to be actually doing a class on black and white photography in June. We'll let you guys know about that. It's a free webinar that you can attend. Okay, Jared, so, if you guys have forgotten by now that you need to subscribe and hit the bell, do so. We don't want you to miss out on our new stuff. So we're going to start.
Definitely hit the bell, because YouTube can be really flaky about letting you know when new videos come out.
It's true.
You want to hit that bell for sure.
All right, so we're going to start looking at some of your work here. So who is this, Jared? What's the story?
All right. This is from Grant, and this is from his first roll of Cine Still for his 50D.
First roll. Okay. I think it's a really interesting photograph with the bicycle somehow in the frame of this bridge. How did they get that
Oh,
bicycle
I
up
think
there?
it's hanging. I just noticed
Yeah,
now.
I see that. But
Yeah.
somebody had to climb up there.
Mm-hmm.
That's kind of a wild story. Somebody had to climb up there in this bridge and somehow hang this bicycle, is assuming it's kind of like an art form, which is kind of interesting. So there's a bit of a punctuation point with the bicycle. That's interesting. You got a lot of geometry. Geometry is always rather interesting. Lots of geometry, lots of lines, triangles, rectangles, squares. Okay, interesting. All right, who's next?
All right, our next one is, and we have a little bit of a bridge theme going
Do
on.
we?
So this is,
Yeah.
yeah, we had several bridge photos taken, all very good. This is Johan, and this is a bridge in uh, New Dandabu, which I'm not even going to try to pronounce the bridge name. And so he kind of talked a bit about how this is from like a local residential area, and it connects a residential area and a recreational area together.
So, this is so nicely framed with the leading line of the bridge going, yeah, there you go. Leading lines and the poles, the uprights are also hugely framing, and that's pulling your eye through. So we have a foreground, we have a middle ground, and there is a background. The only thing I would say, and you've heard me say this before, I would just stay right there and wait, because what would really elevate this photograph, in my opinion, and you can take my opinion or leave it, is a person walking or biking through here, some motion, because now you have it framed. But if we put a point there, that's going to draw your eye to that subject and really highlight it. Now, my basic point is this. We have more affinity for people than for objects. So when you put a person in a photograph, or a dog, I mean, it'd be cool if a dog came running down this, bridge. I think that'd be amazing. But I would wait. You have the stage so perfectly set. Just stay put. And Ed Kashi made this point. Bob Holmes has made this point. You have to be patient. You have to wait for the magic to unfold. Maybe you wait an hour. You've got a perfect setup. Great. Photography is driven, it sounds kind of funny, but it's driven by patience. You have to, on one hand, you have to be ready for a photograph to happen in a split second, because that can happen too. On the other hand, you have to be patient enough to wait, okay? So just do that. Jared, you might want to mute the keyboard there.
I wasn't even typing.
Oh, maybe that's me. Okay. All right. So good. Let's move on. So just wait for your photograph. You've got a great image there. Just something can pop. All right. Who's next?
All right. Our next one, this is from Mateo, and this is called Invisible, and it was taken in the Philippines.
Well, Mateo, there's an example of what I was just talking about. You did wait, and you have people moving into your frame. And it's very interesting how you've got the motion going there. I think that really adds to the photograph. You use a slow shutter speed, which kept everything but these guys moving very still. And their motion is accentuated because you have a slower shutter speed. And that actually works really well. You also have the guy's foot raised, both of them. That's good timing. You had to probably think about that when you're pressing the shutter and wait. I'm sure you did, because you got both of them. And I think it's just really interesting how they're moving in towards you. That motion really adds adds emotion. The word motion, you just put an E in front of it and you have emotion. Emotion has motion connected to it. Think about it. If somebody's very apathetic and kind of dead, are they moving? No, there's no motion. If somebody's angry, you get this kind of motion, right? Somebody is really happy, they do things with their hands. There's motion connected with it. So there you go. And Yvette said, yeah, I do like the what's going on. There's a little message on the t-shirt. So that's an added bonus there. First passion, and then love your look something. We can't see the rest of it, but that's cool. It doesn't matter. And that works really well. Good one.
Yeah, and Victor also brought up the juxtaposition with the subject.
Yeah, remember we're talking about emotion. What's the emotion of this guy? What do you think his emotion is like? He's just kind of passed out over here on the right. I mean, he's sleeping, but it's broad daylight. And these guys
it goes
are
to
moving.
the title too with the invisible. It's like not only do we not see their faces, but he's just kind of there.
That is a whole story in one photograph, so that's great. Good job. Good one.
All right. Here's one from Thomas Newman. Once it comes up. There we go. So this is from Thomas Newman. Once again, I told you, a lot of people had bridges.
It's funny how we have these themes. I don't know how that works.
Yeah. So this is a photo that he took in Brisbane, Australia. And so this was taken I believe this was a long exposure taken by the Story Bridge. I think that's what this one was. So,
maybe you could answer this in the chat. Are those enhanced colors, or is that really what you saw at that time? Is that what came out of the camera? I'm just curious. Obviously, there's a lot of color on the bridge itself, and it's interesting how it reflects in the water. It's a very interesting photograph. It's very much a painting type photograph, and I always mean that in a very positive way. I feel like there's a huge, strong connection between painting and photography, and they should be connected because it's like one art form versus another, but you're using the same concept. So it's it's a really interesting image. I would like to know, how much post was done with that, and just out of curiosity. But it really, it tells a interesting story of that bridge. I've never seen it, but that you captured something really unusual that for the rest of us, we get pretty curious about it, which is another good thing about a photograph that leaves you asking questions, which this one does. Okay, good.
All right. Moving from color, we go to some black and white. We've got one. This one's from Yvette. And I love this image. Two planes go by, and I find it interesting with the sun. I love black and white.
I'm going to move myself out of the way here a little bit. I'll just have to clip off for a second because I want to see the whole photograph. Very subtle photograph, and another sort of what I would consider almost like a drawing, right? It could be using black pigment or, with a brush. That's kind of what it feels like.
Almost like charcoal.
Charcoal, could be charcoal, exactly. Very interesting, Yvette. I see that you're experimenting, which is always cool. And you've got these, diagonal lines, which show motion. Yeah, there you go. Good one. Okay.
All right. Our next photo. Oh, I hit the wrong thing.
Oh, we're into
It's always
Photoshop.
fun when you, about to look at Photoshop. This one is from our friend Chicagoland Jared. And this was taken in a Chicago suburb, Naperville. It is probably the most urban and interesting place so far removed from the city itself. There's tons of murals, shops, and plenty of people out and about. And he saw this mural, and it really got his attention for the interplay between the 2D and 3D. So
yeah,
that's why he grabbed it.
It's a really wild, for your eye to start looking at it, because where does the mural start in the building?
1 second, I gotta get that to make it go down. Sorry.
Yeah. Where does the mural start in the building? It's very tricky because I think all this stuff to the right of the brick building is mural, right? All of it,
Yeah.
even the apparent three dimensionality. It really isn't. It's all just a mural. It's very interesting. And the guy walking through the frame, what I mentioned before, I had some interest to it, and he's just walked through the frame. But yeah, cool photograph because I love that you guys are telling stories about where you are, and don't ever think because you're in some place that you've seen over and over again that everybody knows what's going on. Because I've never seen this, and I've never seen the bridge in Brisbane. This is new for us. So bravo on capturing your own local community, and this is a cool photograph. And black and white works really well. I'm sure there's a lot of color there, but it just works really well. So good one, Jared. Okay.
All right. This one's from Lucian, and it just came with the caption "Bridges."
Bridges. Oh yes, there's a
Yep.
bridge. How do you guys do this? Do you get together and say, okay, we're going to get into the critique show and we're going to go cover bridges? Well, there is a
I think
bridge
so.
there. There is a bridge there, and it's really interesting how this lump of earth in the foreground. Yeah, where is that coming from? That's kind of interesting. And a little stream. It's an interesting natural, landscape. I'd probably say what I said before. I'd love to see a bicycle or a dog or horse going across that bridge. You've got the stage set. Hang out. See what happens. If it's sometimes you got to wait a long time, but you've got a cool setting there. And what's good is that if a person were going across there, they would probably stand out well once they cleared the tree. They could be almost anywhere in the frame. Yeah, on either side. So just be patient, hang out, because it's a beautiful photograph. I just think adding that one more touch would make a big difference. All right.
All right. This one is from Amir, and this was taken at the Holocaust Memorial in Israel.
Wow. Well, there's perfect example what I was just saying. Here's a little boy in the frame. I assume that's a little boy. Yeah, it looks like
Yes.
a little boy. It's very, there's that little opening there. And, he's walking into the opening there, which is a frame in itself. Frames can be any shape or size. There's U-shaped frames, there's rectangular frames, there's square frames like a window, round frames. You could have a round frame window, but in this case, you have a triangular frame, and it really works well. And it's interesting how you process it. Was this shot with film? I'm just curious if you could answer that. It would be interesting to see if it. I'm curious if you captured it with film. But anyway, that works really well. Just for me, in terms of processing it, I would boost the dynamic range. I would say contrast, but I tend to not use contrast anymore. I generally, because you have different ways you can increase the contrast. If you caught our show last week with Rickard, he's talking about in Lightroom you have 3 sliders, or Photoshop for that matter, and you've got texture. You have at the bottom you have dehaze, and you have another slider in the middle there, and basically they're all controlling different parts of the contrast curve. I would just add more contrast to this by making the darks a little deeper. I always try to get the maximum amount of blacks in a photograph and the maximum amount of whites. I just move those sliders as far as I can go. It would just make it pop a little bit more. That would just be my advice. But the composition is great. So I would just take a look at that if you want to try that, and then maybe pop that into the AYP club. That might be interesting to just see where you go with that. And I'll just give you my normal disclaimer. You can take any of my suggestions and let them pass you by, or you can try them. It's totally up to you. Okay.
All right, here's one from our friend Spas, who has a bike riding one, and he was very happy with this image of capturing a decisive moment, dramatic light. He said, "What more could one ask for, really?"
I'm. Oh, I see. Okay, there's the bicycle. I'm just trying to see what is this a photograph of. I'm just
Here, I'll,
curious.
I'll zoom in. It's of a race,
Oh wow. Oh, it's
and
a
it
guy
looks like,
crashing.
yep, it's a guy crashing. So
Wow.
he did say the one thing you could ask for is no white stripe, but
Yeah.
other
Well,
than that, you've
you.
got a pretty perfect moment.
Yeah. Now I get it. I just couldn't when it was zoomed out. I just couldn't see what it is. It's a guy crashing, and a whole bunch of dust flying up here. Well, good on that action shot. You did hang out and wait for that decisive moment. And the colors and frames are in the frame are really interesting. It's just these brown tones, yeah, and that kind of edge there. Boy, this guy must have hurt after that. That looks like an uncomfortable crash. Well, good one on capturing that moment. You definitely got that decisive moment there.
All right. This one is from Debbie Phillips. She posted a bunch of photos that she's taken over the last 18 months, and these were some of her favorites. So this was one that I picked.
I like this one, Debbie, and I like the way our eye is pulled into the frame. And you've already heard me say I like people in the frame, and they're moving in one direction, and your eye's moving in another direction. If you notice it, it's like the people I feel like are mainly flowing towards me as the viewer, but my eye, and that actually works really well. My eye is being basically pulled towards the back, and that adds some kind of motion feeling and contrast. And the pink on the edge there is really interesting too. There's kind of like the pink line keeps your eye moving towards the end of the frame. And that was good on your part. You captured it in such a way that all the lines and the motion are moving together and creating a kind of a harmony, which isn't always the case. Sometimes if that pink wall were somehow angled off this way, it would pull your eye out of the frame. But it's all being pulled into the frame, and that's really important. You want to think when you look at your photograph, look around the edges and look at where your eye goes. So good composition there, Debbie. Good job.
All right. This one is from Monique, and this is her version of "Girl with a Pearl Earring."
Oh, that's very clever. I love that sort of, I don't know if I'm going to say pouty look or I'm going to say a mood or is she a little shy? But whatever it is, her eyes are gorgeous, looking right at us. Yeah. A little catchlight in the eyes too, which really helps. And the girl with the pearl earring, that's really clever and it's a great photograph. And of course, it works really well as a black and white. But remember what I said about emotion? There's definitely an emotion there. There's a feeling coming from this girl. And the fact that her eyes are really connecting with us, she's connecting with you as the photographer, which is what made that happen. So bravo. Kudos to you for making that happen. All right.
All right.
We'll do a couple of more here.
This is from Ram, and it is by the Atlantic.
Someone watching into the Atlantic, and there's a ship out there. Can you zoom in on that one a little bit too?
Yeah.
Just a wee bit.
You want to see
I'm
some
just
of
curious,
the?
what are we looking at here? Is this a
So that looks like a cruise ship.
cruise
I
ship?
think.
And then in the foreground, though, is that those waves?
A
I
boy.
guess.
Oh,
No,
these.
the waves coming in on the beach. It looks like. I was just curious what. Yeah,
Yeah, I
zoom.
think so. Some
Yeah, zoom
waves.
back out. I think it's remarkable. It's very much like a drawing or a painting, and it's got some basic shapes in it. If you look at it, so we have a kind of a rectangle in the foreground on the sand where he is. We got the little boy, and then there's a triangle, like a pyramid upside down here. That's, yeah, where the sunlight is. And the little dot of the cruise ship. So you've got a lot of geometry going on there, which makes, generally, geometry is a great tool for composition. I'm a big fan of it. So you've chosen your framing really well to take advantage of that, all that geometry going on. So good one.
All right. This one is from Che. I love hiking through the mountains, and these are some of my favorites.
Beautiful mountains, and I'm curious where you are in the world.
I know they live in Poland, but I don't know if these would be mountains in Poland or not.
Okay.
Since it is, I love traveling, especially places like these mountains. So I don't know exactly where these mountains are.
Yeah. Okay, so it's a beautiful landscape photograph. I would love to see something else in the frame, either clouds. I understand it wasn't a cloudy day, but clouds could add a lot of dimension. Clouds are always good to add to your photograph. So, how do you do that? Well, you look for times when there's cloudy days and weather, and you take advantage of it. You may not have had that opportunity. Yeah, I would look for something else to add, just that little tiny bit. Sometimes it's just one little element, maybe some wispy clouds, maybe a bird flying in, would just pull it up and just add a little more interest to it. But look, as part of a series of photographs, this could work really well. You're documenting, this mountainous area that you're going backpacking in or whatever. Okay.
All right. Here's one from our friend Glenn. He took this at a zoo, I believe it was. Yeah, so this was taken at Casa de Forte, which is a family-owned, operated roadside establishment. So it's kind of this roadside place, I guess. And
Casa de Fruta, right? Is
Fruta?
this?
Yeah, that's it. That's
Okay,
it.
Casa de Fruta. I've been there many times. It's on a little road. It started off as a tiny little kind of roadside thing. There's a small connecting road that goes in California, goes from Highway 101 over to Highway 5, and it's on this little road. And over the years, it's just gotten bigger and bigger and bigger, and now they have lots of animals and that sort of thing. Glenn, I know it really well, and you got a cool portrait of this peacock, and I love taking animal portraits. The colors are pretty amazing. I mean, you got that background against the deep blue. I mean, peacocks are pretty amazing. I assume that's a peacock, right?
Yes, it is.
It's a female. The males are the one that have all the big, huge plumage, right? As I recall.
I think this is a male. Its plumage is just small. It looks
I
like
see.
so. It could be a young male.
Okay, young male doesn't have his full plumage going on. Anyway, good one, Glenn. And Glenn is helping us, by the way. Bob Holmes has written an ebook that's coming out soon, and Glenn is helping us design it. So thank you, Glenn. And we look forward to seeing that ebook.
Yeah. All right. I think we got time for one or two more.
Yep.
Here is Robbins. And the message for this one, took this a while back at Zabriskie Point in Death Valley.
Point.
Yep. Quite the place for a photo adventure. So much variety in the landscape, from these rock formations to sand dunes and dramatic mountains all around.
There was a movie made in the 60s called Zabriskie Point. Rather risque, by the way. But yeah, okay. Well, I was just talking about clouds. What they do is they add a lot of dimension, and you've got the clouds there. You've got a lot of contrast, which is also a really cool composition tool, between the brightness of the rock here, I think that's just rock, and the background, with the dark. So composition wise, that works really well, and the clouds work really well. It adds a lot of interest to your photograph. So good one. Zabriskie Point. I think I've been there a long time ago, but I know where it is. it's a, an interesting spot for sure. Okay.
All right, and then our last one. This is from our friend Bert.
Hey, Bert.
So he was invited to shoot at a celebrity charity golf tournament in North Carolina this last weekend, and so he said that it was fun. It was interesting to do uh, golf because he doesn't do golf as often as a lot of other sports.
Yeah, and there's the guy hitting the ball, and the ball is like, it's interesting because it's compressed because you used a long lens, but the ball seems to be just sort of hovering right on his face, which of course it isn't. But that's because of the compression of the telephoto. And then of course you've controlled your depth of field very carefully, and that's not easy the way you were shooting it. So good one. That's an interesting photograph. Interesting action shot at the decisive moment. Good one. All right. Well, thank you guys. We've got a little business here to take care of. We are going to give away a Bay Photo print. But before we do that, I want to tell you guys that in almost an hour and 19 minutes, I'm doing a webinar. I'd love to have you guys come over and listen in to what I'm going to say. Jared, if you put the link in there so they know how to get there. It'll be another class. And if you haven't already attended one of my webinars, they're all a little different. I cover a lot of the same, but every week I tweak these things and change it around a little bit. So I'd love to have you guys jump in there in a little over an hour. Jared's going to have the link there for you. All you got to do is click on it. There it is, and join us. That would be awesome. And we're scheduled next week for a webinar with Bob Holmes, but I need to reconfirm it with him because there was some question about his schedule. So stay tuned on that one. If it isn't next week, it'll be, soon. It's coming up soon. I love it when you guys are interacting with each other in the AYP Club. That's really your place to put your photographs. And what I like to do is, do what I'm doing here with you guys now and interact and show you, kind of what I think. And hopefully that will help. Jared, have I left anything out as far as up and coming things that we should let people know about?
No, other than that, make sure you're subscribed once again.
Don't forget to subscribe and enable the bell. Okay. And as always, I love...
we also have our winner.
Oh, we got to get the winner out. So who is
our winner is Grant Klein with the mysterious bicycle on the bridge.
Right at the very beginning. Good one.
Yeah. So congratulations, Grant. I'll be reaching out to you later today on Facebook. Okay,
cool. So do join me today, okay? So that's in 1 hour and 17 minutes. Just go to that link, register. If you've got some friends that want an introduction to AYP, tell them about it. You got an hour to send that link around, okay? I really appreciate it. It really helps us get our message out and introduce AYP to other people, including letting you guys know more about what we're doing. Okay, well, thank you guys. Keep shooting and especially work on your projects, okay? Take a sequential approach to your photographs. Photograph the same area, and that area could be your own house. It could be just right outside your house. It could be your own family. You photograph the same 3 people or 1 person over a period of time. Do that, and let's see what happens. And just remember this. Say it with me. Remember to get out and capture your own images of life. Love you guys. See you at the webinar, and we'll see you soon. Take care.